Everybody, welcome back to WCEF, brought to you by Celsius. Happy to be joined right now by Gabe Luna-Ostaseski. And he's going to talk to us a little bit about Braintrust, which is the first user-controlled talent network that provides enterprises with the skilled, highly technical design talent that they need. He's going to be talking about the future of work. But prior to founding Braintrust, he co-founded the home improvement marketplace Modernize.com. Recently, he consulted and advised and invested in 30 plus Silicon Valley startups, including Thumbtack, Uber, Surfare, Lending Home, Metro Mile, and Massdrop. The first 5 companies he advised raised over $300 million in follow-on funding. So Gabe, what do you think the future of the worker and company looks like in 2030? And even a little bit before that, because I think that we're going to be seeing that transition. So how do we get from here to 2030, and what do you see the future looking like?
Yeah, I mean, I think that like some of these trends have been underway for many years, right? Like the move to remote work didn't just happen in 2020. It probably moved forward by a decade in that 6 months. But I think some of these things have been underway for quite some time. So if you look at the larger trends, you would say that like on the company side, companies are moving towards more agile, flexible workforces that are increasingly like managed by technical teams, right? All companies on the planet have now become tech companies. Whether it's Nestle or Porsche, all those companies are hiring technical talent and in a war for talent. The second thing is like all of those companies now need much more flexible, agile environments because the world is just changing faster, new technologies, new demographic trends. And so the composition of those companies' workforces are both different and also need to evolve rapidly. And then if you look on kind of the demographics of the talent side, you see a few things that are really interesting. Number one is like the idea of working for the same company for 40 years and collecting your pension and riding off into the sunset, like is an old idea, right? It's maybe from our parents' generation, and it's something that's clearly past here. Now, job duration is probably 2-3 years max. The second thing is that like people want to do work that they love, but they want to do it on their own terms. And those terms might be working different hours than everyone else. They might be working in a different location than everyone else. And so I think what's really interesting is like you're seeing the convergence of those two things that are being accelerated by the technologies that can now enable people to work wherever they want, whenever they want, and still plug into the systems of companies. So listen, I don't know how it all plays out in 20 years from now, but I think what is very, very clear is that we're moving towards an environment that's much more distributed and where people are essentially becoming their own bosses and being able to connect into this distribution platform that we call the internet to find work that they love.
What do you think some of the challenges are for the traditional salaried worker in the modern freelancer economy? And do you think that crypto is helping? And also on the flip side, what about traditional Fortune 500 companies? How are they converging? And is there like a cross section for crypto there?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think historically, like the reason that, especially in America, like the reason that people took full-time jobs was essentially for like benefits. And still in the US, that's still a problem, right? Like people don't have access to benefits as a freelancer. We just launched a pilot actually about a month ago to provide benefits on the platform to freelancers. So I think it's a problem that will be solved as the population of talent and freelancers grows. So that's traditionally like why people have taken full-time jobs with corporates. The other one is like essentially a career progression plan, right? A way to upskill and essentially earn more money, take on new jobs. Again, I think that the tools for that and the networks for that are consistently emerging. Like Braintrust launched an academy where you can take courses to essentially evolve in your career. So I think those things, there wasn't a big enough market of freelancers before, but now as you have like tens of millions of people joining the ranks of freelancers, now there's a real viable economic reason to build solutions and tools for that population. So I think it's just those are things that capitalism is really good at solving, is like where there's markets, there will be innovation.
Okay, what do you think are some skills that people who are looking for work right now should be cultivating, especially in the crypto space? And are they only technical?
Yeah, I mean, I think that more broadly speaking, I think the skills that are required excuse me for a second. My son is about to walk through the door and blow up our meeting here. So let me get a few more minutes for me. Thanks. Just wanted to buy us some time here. So the question around like what workers need, if you speak about it more broadly, I would say like resiliency, right? Like we're going through periods where change is moving faster than ever, new technologies, new ways of working, new opportunities. And so being able to like rapidly evolve and take on new skills, new challenges, new opportunities, I think broadly is super critical. I think, one of the things that's interesting within crypto land is like curiosity, right? Like that's kind of maybe what helped all of us to fall down the rabbit hole was like we found some string and we kept pulling on it and getting a little bit more interested. Maybe that was like maybe Bitcoin that started for those of us. And then you're like, hey, whoa, what's this technology that's actually underpinning Bitcoin? And then like, hey, what if you go one layer deeper and one layer deeper than that? And so I think like curiosity is actually one of the driving forces behind the development of this market. Is you have really smart people that are really curious and basically like trying to understand how it all works and how it can be used to build new things.
How do the robots play into this future?
Well, listen, I think that the idea before was that robots are essentially going to take over all the low-skilled jobs, right? Like that's been the kind of the prevailing thesis was like robotic process improvement, right? But then what you've seen in these last few years is actually like, I'll say that the robots and the algos taking over pretty high-end jobs, things like Wealthfront and Betterment. I don't think get the credit for what they did was basically like replacing a financial planner, which is like traditionally a pretty high-paying job, and essentially replacing that with an algorithm. And so I think you're going to see more and more of that. There's a lot of theses out here about like how the traditional job of an engineer will actually be replaced by algorithms, and it will become much more of a copy paste environment. And so I think that innovation has always come not from necessarily the creation of new things, but actually the recombining of things. And so I think that that's part of what makes crypto so cool is this idea of composability and the idea that you can like take this thing from here and take this thing from here and combine it and make this new thing like almost overnight. And so it kind of goes back to that point of like curiosity and resiliency is trying a lot of new things and experimenting. And I think that's like the thing that I love most about this space is the pace of experimentation.
One of the uses of your BTRST token is for your connector program that pays people referral rewards. Can you share what your experience has been with that? And do you see this as a disrupting role for recruiters?
Yeah, listen, I think that's one of our theses when we first started Braintrust was that the users that actually help to build the network, that bring the companies and that bring the talent should be the people that get rewarded, right? And the way that we reward them is through earning BTrust programmatically through the network. And that we always knew that would work. We just didn't know it would work so well. And so we have now 150 of the Fortune 1000 companies that are using Braintrust, right? Everyone from Nike to Nestle and Porsche and NASA, all these incredible organizations that we've never spent a penny to acquire a customer. And we've never even sent an outbound email. Like we don't do prospecting emails. All of that is driven by our connector program. And on the talent side, the same thing is like great people know great people, and they already are doing this action, right? They're already they know other designers, and engineers know other engineers. And so it's an opportunity for them to invite those people to a network, earn Braintrust, but more importantly, like be the person in their network that knows about the new thing, and in a way for their, for their friends to get work. So I think this is like, this is the core innovation of Web3, right? If you think about these generations of like Web1, the core innovation was essentially putting the encyclopedia on the internet. And Web2 is really about like this idea of like reading and writing and interacting. And that's what gave way to, these marketplaces, these e-commerce marketplaces, this idea of interaction. And I think that the core innovation of Web3 is really this idea of like programmable ownership, and being able to, give away governance and ownership to the people that actually help build the network. So putting power and value back into the people's hands. And that for me is like what's the most exciting part about building in the ownership economy.
So I've always been a little bit averse to technology, and I know that you have family listed in your Twitter profile. Is that something important to you? Do you feel like your advice to your kid is, or I don't know if it's 2 children maybe, but is your advice to your child any different? Like, what would you say to people that are really, trying to raise their kid and giving them a future in an economy that's really strange, right? So what would you tell them?
Well, I mean, I can tell them what I did, which is that like we took all the change. We went to Coinstar machine and we put all the change in, and we got a receipt out, and bought Bitcoin. And it was an opportunity to explain like the difference between like the different uses of money. Essentially, you can spend it, right? You can give it, like you can save it, you can invest it. And so I was trying to teach my kids about like the different use cases of money. And that was a pretty like theoretical idea, right? And the week after, my daughter was like, she wanted this toy. And I was like, well, like you could sell some Bitcoin to like buy this toy. And she looked back in her account and she saw like this big dip that like Bitcoin had lost about 20% of its value or 30%. And she like ran through our entire house saying like, I wish I never bought Bitcoin. So I think over the past few weeks, I'm sure there was a lot of people running through their houses screaming the same thing. But listen, I think it's really interesting to start kind of like teaching our kids about that early, and like giving them the actual tactile experience of like logging into a screen and it's like seeing their investments or seeing their savings. So these days, like you can do that in a pretty simple way. You can go to like a Coinstar machine and accomplish it. It doesn't really take a bunch of technical know-how.
Yeah, plus kids like that kind of thing. The lemonade stands, maybe now you have to get a permit, but they still have ideas for businesses. I know you have a hard stop coming up. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience before you go?
Listen, like I would imagine that the audience obviously really interested in crypto. I'm sure like maybe have different kind of a working environments where they're freelancing or whether they're, running their own businesses or running their own agencies, whatever it may be. So, Braintrust is a great resource. Braintrust.com is a great resource. If you want to be, if you're a talent looking for work in these kind of technical roles, you can sign up. If you're looking to hire, you can sign up there and be matched to talent. We match companies to 3 people, on average 3 people within 24 hours that have been pre-screened, that can help them with the work they're doing. Or, hey, listen, maybe you're a connector. Maybe you just know companies and you know talent that are interested, and you can sign up to be a connector on Braintrust and actually earn Braintrust tokens in proportion to all the people that you refer. So lots of ways to get involved that don't involve writing a single line of code.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much. And everybody, if you can please keep in touch with Gabriel. He may have a little bit of time to hang out in the chats, but there's also a networking function here on the platform, so you guys can connect. He's also on Twitter and all over the place. So thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Take good care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, everyone. So I think we're going to take a little break. We've got another panel coming up. I'm talking about a 60-second break. It's going to be fast. And then we'll be talking to you a little bit more about the future of work and companies and talk a bit about DAOs. So stay tuned.